Minimizing unwanted effects is something everyone strives for. That's why microdosing is so effective, because you derive the maximum benefit from taking the minimum effective dose. People microdose for many different reasons. For relaxation, to gain control of their mental health, wellness, or performance and recovery. I use microdose for stress relief and to help with sleep. On Friday night, at the end of my work week, it helps me ease into the weekend and ramp down for my stressful day job. Today's podcast is sponsored by Microdose Gummies and Lumi Labs. Microdose Gummies deliver perfect entry-level doses of THC that help you feel just the right amount of good. I love this company and personally use their products. The gummies are organic, infused with real fruit, vegan-friendly, gluten-free, and they taste good. Microdose is available nationwide. To learn more about microdosing THC, go to microdose.com and use code BEYOND to get free shipping and 30% off your first order. Links can be found in the show description. But again, that's microdose.com and code BEYOND.
This podcast contains adult themes and graphic violence. Listener discretion is advised.
A commercial-free version of this podcast is available on Patreon for $1 per month. Patreon.com/Beyond Contempt podcast. I'm Renee, and this is Beyond Contempt True Crime. You're listening to episode 87, Jacqueline Annette Williams. James Edwards lived with Deborah Evans and her 3 children in a 2-bedroom apartment in Addison, Illinois. Addison was considered a middle-class area and is part of the Chicago metropolitan area. Deborah moved there to make a better life for her kids and to escape some of the previous unhealthy relationships she had been in. Samantha was 10 years old, Joshua was 7, and Jordan was nearly 2. Deborah had a 4th child on the way and was going to be induced at the hospital in the next few days. They had named the baby boy Elijah. On November 16, 1995, James headed to work around 5:30 p.m. After his shift, he returned home around 2:30 a.m. Jordan, the toddler, was in the kitchen. Deborah was on the floor between a couch and the coffee table in the living room. Her throat was cut, and there was a massive wound across her stomach. The oldest, Samantha, was in a bedroom on the floor, covered by a blanket. Her throat had been cut. 7-year-old Joshua was missing. A very distressed James Edwards dialed 911. Across the way, Patrice Scott received a visitor at her home after midnight on November 17, 1995. Patrice lived in the Villa Park Apartments with her boyfriend, Dwight Pruitt, and her 3 daughters. Jacqueline Williams, who commonly went by the name Annette, was stopping by Patrice's apartment. They had known each other for a few years. About a month prior, Annette told Patrice that she was pregnant and was due in November. When Annette knocked, Dwight woke up and went to see who was standing at his door. He saw Annette and a young boy, so he returned to bed and told Patrice that her friend was here. Annette was wearing a white sweater that was stained with blood spots. A young boy was with her, who was wearing a coat, t-shirt, and boots, but was missing pants and socks, which was strange for the weather in Illinois in November. Annette asked if the young boy could spend the night at her house, because his mother had been shot during a drug deal. Annette said she was going to visit the woman in the hospital. Annette could not watch after the boy because she had just given birth. She would bring her newborn over to visit when she came back to pick up the boy. After he used the restroom, Patrice put the young man on her couch. She heard the boy crying and whimpering in his sleep during the night. Patrice didn't know that his name was Joshua Evans, and he had been through a traumatic tragedy that same evening. At 5 a.m., Patrice got up to feed Alexis, her newborn baby. Joshua was still crying while sleeping. He woke up a little while later. Patrice asked the young boy if he was worried about his mother and attempted to soothe him, telling him that she would be okay. Joshua said she was not okay, and that his mother and sister were dead. He said 4 burglars went in through the window and cut his mother and sister. Joshua had been hiding, but when he thought the burglars left, he ran out, and that was when he ran into that woman who brought him to her house. Patrice asked Joshua to describe the burglars. He said they were called Annette, Fidel, Laverne, and Boo Boo. Patrice's daughters tried to read Joshua a book, but he wasn't able to calm down. At 9 a.m., Annette returned to Patrice's apartment. Patrice questioned Annette and her story about Joshua. She told Annette about the burglars who entered Joshua's home. Annette was angry with Joshua and called him a liar. She said that the boy talked too much and needed to shut his damn mouth. The little boy countered, No, that's what happened. Annette told Joshua that his mother left him medicine. Joshua told Annette that he did not take any medicine. She took him into the kitchen and gave him something, which made him gag, then vomit. Annette asked Patrice to come over to her house so she could give her clothes for her newborn. Patrice asked Dwight to watch Alexis, but he said no and told her to take the newborn with her. Annette drove Patrice, Alexis, and Joshua to her townhome in Schaumburg. She brought Patrice to her bedroom. Annette's boyfriend, Fidel Caffey, was there with a blonde-haired, pale baby boy with tape stretched across his belly button. Later on, Annette asked Patrice to bring Joshua downstairs to the laundry room. Caffey was there, and a man she didn't recognize. Annette told Joshua to sit down on the daybed. Caffey asked his girlfriend, Annette Williams, why she hadn't taken Joshua to the projects. She said that he talked too much and knew their names. Williams took a white cord and wrapped it around Joshua's neck, and she began strangling the young boy with Caffey's help. Patrice and Joshua were both screaming in terror, and Patrice pushed Williams, which caused her to drop the cord. Williams left the laundry room briefly and returned with a knife. Patrice screamed again and asked to be taken home. At one point, she tried to escape, but they were locked in the townhome. Caffey told Williams to take Patrice home. If she told anyone, he promised to kill her and her whole family. Everyone went to the garage and got in the car. Patrice and Alexis were in the passenger seat. Joshua got into the back seat, but when Patrice turned around, she saw Caffey stab Joshua. Williams got in the car and began driving everyone to Maywood. Patrice was terrified. They stopped at a building. Caffey and Williams took Joshua to the back of that building and returned to the car without the boy. Joshua wasn't fully dressed and was left to die alone in an alley in the cold temperatures of Illinois in November. Williams dropped Caffey in Maywood and returned Patrice and her baby to the Villa Park apartment around 12:15 p.m. Williams asked Patrice to bring her cleaning supplies so she could clean Joshua's vomit from her car. After that, Williams drove away. While Patrice was gone, her boyfriend Dwight turned on the news and saw a story about local murders. There were pictures of Deborah Evans and her children. He recognized a photo of Joshua, the boy who had been brought to his home. Dwight wasn't without his flaws, and he was a gang member, had been convicted for armed robbery and drug charges, and had served time because of a weapons charge. He didn't have a working phone at the house, so he got dressed and left the apartment. Dwight could not find a working payphone, so he returned home. He eventually got access to a phone, called authorities, and the police came out to his apartment. Patrice was able to tell them where Joshua was last seen, and law enforcement drove over to Maywood to look for the boy. They found him deceased in an alley. When Patrice told police about the 4 burglars, she did not give them all the names. She excluded Boo Boo, who was Kelvin Bo Wilson, and was the other man at William Schomburg townhome. He was never charged with a crime. Police visited Annette Williams and Fidel Caffey at their Schomburg townhome. They were not home, but their children were there. Later that night at 11:45 p.m., Williams and Caffey returned, and police arrested them as they entered the townhouse. They found Elijah in an infant carrier with a bloody piece of tape over his belly button. Caffey was wearing a Grambling Tigers jacket taken from the Evans household. Annette Williams initially tried to lie to the law enforcement. She claimed Elijah was her son, and she had given birth at a friend's home on November 16th. She told the police that Caffey was the father, and they named the baby Fidel Caffey Jr. Then Williams changed her story and told another officer that Caffey and Laverne Ward, who was her cousin, went to Deborah's apartment to teach her a lesson. She claimed Caffey demanded she meet them at Deborah's apartment around 10 p.m. on November 16th. When she arrived, Caffey had the baby and handed it to her. Williams said both Caffey and her friend Patrice wanted to leave Joshua in the projects, but she would not allow it. Caffey was so angry that she brought Joshua to their townhome that he asked her to get the knife. Caffey also instructed her to wrap the cord around Joshua's neck. He told her to drive to Maywood, where he stabbed Joshua during the car ride. Annette Williams changed her tune one last time when she signed a written statement on November 18, 1995. She admitted to more of a role in the kidnapping and murders. As a bit of a backstory, James Edwards lived with Deborah since 1989. They broke up several times and were on again and off again. During those breakups, Laverne Ward lived with Deborah, and he was Jordan's father. James Edwards moved back in with Deborah in March 1995. Deborah told her sister that James was Elijah's father, but a DNA test showed Laverne Ward was the father. A few weeks before the murders, James heard Deborah and Ward arguing on the phone several times. Ward stopped at Deborah's house a week before the murder and asked James about the timing of his work schedule. He told Ward that he worked from 6 p.m. to 2:30 a.m. Around 9 p.m. on November 16, 1995, Caffey, Ward, and Williams drove to Deborah's apartment to talk about Ward and Deborah's son, Jordan. Williams claimed that she went to the bathroom and heard a loud noise. When she left the bathroom, Deborah was on her back with her eyes blinking rapidly and bubbles coming out of her mouth, while Caffey was holding a silver handgun. Ward was stabbing Deborah in the neck area, and Caffey made a cut across Deborah's stomach with the poultry shears. He removed a baby boy from her stomach and crudely cut the umbilical cord. Caffey thought the baby was dead, but then Williams blew on the baby's face, and he began breathing. She put the baby in clothes. Caffey and Ward went into the children's bedroom. Joshua ran out and was crying because his sister was being hurt. Williams covered Deborah with a blanket. Joshua vomited and ran into the bathroom. Williams was leaving the apartment as Joshua asked to go with her. He didn't want to stay there. Everyone got in the car, and they dropped Ward off on Roosevelt Road. Next, they drove to Patrice Scott's apartment and dropped Joshua off. Williams and Caffey went to one of her friends' homes, and that was where they bandaged the newborn's navel. They went back to their townhouse in Schomburg and tried to clean up. Caffey had taken a coat from Deborah's home and tried to wash the blood out of it. The next morning, Williams went to Patrice's apartment and learned that Joshua told her about the murders. Williams now had a problem on her hands. After they brought Joshua and Patrice to her apartment, Williams tried to get Joshua to swallow poison. Williams' motivation for the crime was she wanted to provide Fidel Caffey with a lighter-skinned baby boy because that's what he wanted. Williams was a jealous woman and thought if she pretended to be pregnant, it would sustain her relationship. In 1992, Caffey quit his job at UPS to sell drugs. Williams started dating him in spring 1994. She already had 3 children and had had a tubal ligation in 1986 because she was done having children. After they started dating, Caffey had another girlfriend named Latrina Montgomery, even though he was dating Williams. Williams learned Caffey had a 1-year-old daughter with Latrina. Williams was jealous and got into verbal and physical altercations with Latrina from 1994 through 1995. In February 1995, Williams told Caffey she was pregnant. In June 1995, Caffey, Williams, and her children moved into the Schaumburg townhouse. Williams went to great lengths to keep up the pregnancy ruse. In April 1995, Williams told her sister, Tina Martin, that she was pregnant and she was due in August. Tina threw her a baby shower. Williams then changed her story and said the baby was due in October. October came and went, but there was no baby. Williams continued to claim she was pregnant. On November 1st, 1995, Williams called her probation officer and said that she had given birth. She told her PO that she named the baby Elijah on November 9th, 1995. On November 17th, 1995, at 3:30 a.m., Tina received a call from her sister who claimed to have given birth at a friend's home. Tina picked up their mom and went to that friend's house, where they saw Williams, Caffey, and a baby who had a lighter skin tone, much like Caffey. Williams even printed 2 counterfeit birth certificates, showing that a baby was born to Fidel Caffey and Jacqueline Annette Williams on November 16, 1995. I have 2 cats and 2 dogs, and I really appreciate not having my home smell like a litter box. You can bring professional and quality fragrance to all the spaces that matter, from business to home, just in time for fall with Scent Air. Scent Air is the real deal, with over 25 years of experience scenting hotels, event spaces, and even creating all those cozy fall vibes you feel in the stores this time of year. The fall collection includes limited release cornucopia, cranberry apple marmalade, and pumpkin pie, plus year-round favorites, apple and oak, and vanilla bourbon. All of Scent Air's more than 60 fragrances are phthalate-free, cruelty-free, safe for families, and EcoVadis certified sustainable. The diffuser was easy to set up, and it ensures that my house doesn't smell like my 4-legged friends, as much as I love them. This fall, try luxury home fragrance trusted by the pros by going to scentair.com and using the promo code BEYOND for 25% off your order. That's BEYOND for 25% off. Annette Williams, Fidel Caffey, and Laverne Ward were charged jointly with 21 counts of first-degree murder, 2 counts of aggravated kidnapping, and 1 count of armed robbery. The 3 defendants were granted separate trials. At the Evans house, there were no signs of forced entry. Blood was spattered in the bathroom, hallway, and living room. There was a fingerprint on a piece of paper, which was a vehicle emissions test that was found on a hutch in the living room. That fingerprint belonged to Annette Williams. In the primary bedroom, there was a blood-soaked ace bandage next to a bloodstain on the bed. Police found poultry shears on the sidewalk in front of Deborah's apartment. 1 handle was broken. There was an empty iodine bottle found in the garage at Patrice Scott's apartment. At Williams Schaumburg townhome, they found a knife that was used to kill Joshua. There was a pool of blood in the backseat of the car Williams had been driving. In the garage, they found a white cable with blood on it, which belonged to Joshua. Investigators also found a blood-stained bedsheet by the Baldwin Piano Company in Bellwood, which was a few blocks away from where Joshua was dumped. Police found the matching sheets and pillowcase in Williams' home. A state expert tested several objects and found blood on the poultry shears that belonged to Samantha, blood on the bathroom vanity that belonged to Elijah, blood on the ace bandage, the emissions testing paper, and the Grambling Tiger's jacket that belonged to Elijah and Jordan. Blood on the bedsheet found by the piano company that belonged to Joshua, and blood on the carpet of Williams' car that also belonged to Joshua. Dr. Shaku Tees performed the autopsies on Deborah and Samantha. They stabbed Samantha 7 times in the neck and left arm, which caused her death. The stab wounds to the arm were likely defensive wounds. A bullet entered through the back of Deborah's head and went through the right side of her brain to behind her forehead. She had 4 incised wounds to her neck. There was a 13-inch gaping wound across her abdomen, and they sliced her uterus open. The placenta, umbilical cord, and intestines near the uterus had been cut. The order of Deborah's wounds could not be determined by the autopsy. A fetus can live 3 to 5 minutes after the mother's heart stops beating. The doctors believed that the primary cause of Deborah's death was the gunshot, but the stab wounds contributed as well. Deborah's OB/GYN testified and said that when a C-section was performed in a medical setting, it required 3 people to deliver a child. The incision used to remove the baby from Deborah's uterus was made at the back of the uterus. This most likely required at least 2 people, as the uterus had to be moved out of the way to make this cut. The physician believed that Deborah's heart was still beating when the baby was removed, because he survived. Dr. Joseph Coggin performed Joshua's autopsy. He had ligature marks around his neck. There were several stab wounds to his neck. There was aspiration, as Joshua had inhaled his own vomit. Joshua was first strangled and was alive when he was stabbed. The aspiration came after he was stabbed. His aspirated stomach contents were consistent with the ingestion of iodine. The ligature marks matched the white cord that was found in Williams' garage. His stab wounds matched the knife in her dishwasher. The doctor believed Joshua died from strangulation, stab wounds, and aspiration. The jury found Jacqueline Annette Williams guilty of the first-degree murders of Deborah, Samantha, and Joshua Evans. She was found guilty of the aggravated kidnappings of Joshua and Elijah. When Williams was being sentenced, they reviewed her record. In 1988, she was under court supervision because of a theft by deception and retail theft. In 1991, they arrested Williams for credit card fraud. They convicted her of theft in 1991 of jewelry and checks that she took when there were several burglaries around a Wheaton house she shared with a male friend. In 1993, they arrested Williams and an accomplice for attempting to cash forged checks at banks. In January 1995, Williams visited Caffey in the hospital after she had stabbed him and punctured his lung. The defense tried to garner sympathy for Williams. In January 1990, Williams called officers because her new boyfriend came over to her apartment, punched her in the face, choked her, and threatened her with a pistol. In 1991 and 1993, police received 4 calls reporting domestic violence between Williams and her boyfriend. This boyfriend was eventually charged with battery, aggravated assault, and domestic battery. He also hit her in the head with a crescent wrench and dragged her by her hair. In 1994, Williams complained to police that Caffey threw bricks at her car when she was in it. He pushed her and hit her in the face. Police charged Caffey with domestic battery and criminal damage to property. Williams' sister, Tina Martin, said she had seen one of her boyfriends abuse her. Williams often wore bruising on her face. Williams' mother, Martha Martin, said that Williams dropped out of high school sophomore year when she got pregnant. She had an IQ of 81, which was below average. Williams was also diagnosed with depression and generalized anxiety disorder, borderline personality disorder, and paranoid personality disorder with antisocial traits. The doctor said that this made her vulnerable to predatory males. In 1993, she completed a nursing assistant program, and while in jail on the murder charges, she earned her GED. Williams' challenges and accomplishments did not move the court, and they sentenced Williams to death. She was given 15 years for each conviction, with the sentences running concurrently. Fidel Caffey had his own trial and was found guilty on all charges. When the court reviewed his history, they found Fidel Caffey had a violent past for which he was perpetually being arrested and charged with various crimes. In March 1991, Caffey was stopped for speeding, and they found a box of ammunition during the search. They arrested him for unlawful possession of ammo, besides the traffic offense. A few months later, he was stopped for speeding, and police found a loaded gun hidden close to the front passenger seat. In February 1992, Caffey fought with another student in school. He blamed his girlfriend, Nikia, for the fight, so he saw her sitting in a car and walked toward her in the parking lot. She rolled down the window, and Caffey slapped her in the face. Nikia attempted to defend herself, and Caffey punched her in the face, then fled the scene. His girlfriend reported the incident to the police, and they charged Fidel Caffey with battery. Nikia never showed up on Caffey's court date because they had not notified her. In September 1994, Caffey fired off rounds from his handgun while standing in the middle of a residential street at lunchtime. A stray bullet hit the windshield of a car. They convicted him of criminal damage to property, unlawful possession of a firearm, and unlawful use of a weapon. They sentenced Caffey to 1 year of conditional discharge and 10 days of community service. In December 1994, Caffey allowed law enforcement to search his car, and they found a handgun under his seat. He was charged with unlawful use of a weapon, but the charge was dismissed. In January 1995, Caffey took a beer bottle and smashed it over another man's head, accusing him of stealing a part from his car. Even though the man had a 3-inch wound, he didn't press charges against Caffey. In July 1995, an officer saw Caffey sitting in a car, recognized him, and realized there was a warrant for his arrest because of a failure to appear in court. And he was arrested. Fidel Caffey grew up in a dysfunctional household with a schizophrenic mother who was regularly hospitalized. She attempted suicide several times in her life and abused drugs and alcohol. Caffey's mother could not care for him because of her illness. Caffey never knew who his father was and confronted one man he believed to be his father. This man told Caffey that several men had group sex with his mother. Caffey sold drugs and hung out with gang members because he had no parental figures in his life to correct those behaviors. Fidel Caffey was involved with Latrina Montgomery and Annette Williams at the same time. Williams was a manipulative person who often used suicide attempts to control Caffey. He once tried to break up with her, and in response, she slit her wrists. The court wasn't sympathetic to Fidel Caffey's troubled upbringing, and he was sentenced to death for the first-degree murder convictions. For the aggravated kidnapping conviction, they gave him a consecutive 30-year sentence. Laverne Ward was convicted of the first-degree murders and was sentenced to life in prison plus 60 years. In 2000, the Illinois governor paused all executions, and in 2003, commuted most of the death sentences to life in prison without the possibility of parole. In 2011, the death penalty was officially abolished in Illinois. Elijah and Jordan Evans moved in with their grandfather, Sam Evans, and were doing well at last report. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Beyond Contempt. Please visit BeyondContemptPodcast.com for the links to the sources and music used in this episode. Research, writing, editing, audio production, and sound design were performed by me, Renee. If you like the show, please leave me a positive review in Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Thank you so much, everyone.